Welcome to an Interbellum mechanics video. In this video, we're going to be going over the item Affix system. A lot of you guys have been asking me questions related to this, so I figured I would make a video explaining a lot of it because it's much easier to see visually than if I just wrote a whole bunch of stuff on a piece of paper. Don't worry, for those of you who like reading more than videos like I myself do, I will actually still spew it all onto a piece of paper as well. First thing I'm doing right now is I'm just creating a character, just because the first component of this is that you will get a set of gear that is given to you when you first create your character. Now, normally your character will be created at level 1, but because this is on the test server, of course, people, when you create new characters, it's put on level 40. But yeah, so when you get level 1, when you first create a character at level 1, you get a selection of gear that has been specifically made for the hard specialization that you spawn in as. All of these pieces of gear are item level 35, and they are weighted more towards defensive stats than other, and the reason for that is because it is a possibility that you will be using these pieces of gear when you at the end of tier tutorial, when you first go into tier plus. So we want to give players the option to have the ability to play in RVR as soon as they come out at level 1. They could go to tier plus if they wanted to with this gear, and they'll at least be able to run around and not just immediately blow up, because of course you start with a 6,000 health regardless of how much wounds you have on gear. And as you can see here, this particular class character is getting almost 50% damage mitigation on his initial starting gear. This is understood through the rest of the concept of the game, which is why there is base damage in the game, so that even this gear that's issued to new recruits here, that tier tutorial will still play well between these people who are having defensive oriented gear. If for any particular reason you do not like the gear that you are issued, right, there actually is a handful of other issued pieces of gear that can drop while you're in tier tutorial. So you can change your stats a little bit into tier tutorial. You can, for example, if you don't like your super tanky tank set on your Ironbreaker, you can swap it out for a little more strength pieces. These pieces of gear are all created with the item Affix system. Actually, almost every single piece of gear you're going to see today is created with the item Affix system. Cap has been doing some wonderful job of creating a ton, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of random items for testers to look around and see at when they get on the server. I mean, like just tons. Like this is scroll on, and this is all just chest plates. Now Cap uses, run away from that because I don't like the sound. Cap uses this tool that I've created, because Cap actually doesn't have, a super 100% understanding of the item Affix system, and is not sitting here manually creating every single item down to the tiniest detail. So the item Affix system always has 36 affixes assigned per piece of gear. But there is conditions that are assigned in order to make pieces of gear that are more reasonably useful to players. So right now, this particular thing is set with no item slot in place, just so you can see the different categories that we have and the stats that can be spawned on gear. So these are 4 different categories, and they have certain restrictions based off the type of piece that you wear. So if I go to the master sheet here, we have 3 different types of item affix restrictions, you got helm, shoulders, body, gloves. That's why boots, which is why that's all green. You have belt and the 4 accessories. 31 is accessory. See, 31 accessories. The belt and the 4 accessories are another set, and then back pieces are by themselves. If you're curious what this does, this just makes items 1 through 11 a helm, shoulder, belt. It's just for making items for Cat's purpose. So we're going to select a helm here. So notice how some of these black out. So what happens there is that these particular affixes are not capable of being spawned on a helm. So much so that if I even try to manually override it, it will, where it's supposed to. Oh yeah, there it is. It argues with me. It says, cannot have an affix in a blacked out cell. So you can't even, as someone who is making items for this, you cannot create items that are outside of those restrictions. Now, for helm, shoulders, shoulder, body, gloves, boots, as you can see here, you require at least 1 affix from this group. That means no matter what, you basically are rolling a 1d4 4-sided die here, and you're getting at least 1 point put in here. The reason why you're only rolling it once is because if you do this, you cannot have more than 1 affix in this group. And then it goes to the next one, and it'll roll. So there's 4 options here, so it will roll another 4-sided dice, essentially, so it's 25% chance of each. And this one also can only have 1 affix in this group. Now, when you get to here, obviously it's going to roll 1d3, because you're required to have 1 affix in this group. But there is not a restriction on multiple affixes in this group. So once you automatically have to have one of these 3. You automatically have to have a resistance on the item. But the other 2 that you don't choose get dropped down into this group. So you need 1 from here, 1 from here, 1 from here, and then after that, these 5, 6, 7, 8 actually is 10 because it includes these other 2 resistances. Now, overall, standard set, you could only have 6 different types of affixes. So if you get a 7th, it's supposed to yell at me, and it did not. Alright, whatever. Why did you not yell at me? What? Alright, well, I need to fix that for him. Not really a big issue, because we use the actual randomizer up here. But, actually, let me make sure that works. Make sure it actually doesn't. Yeah. Oh, it does. Okay, so, well, you can get more than 6 items. Oh, wait. Right. See, sometimes even I don't fully understand the item affix system unless I'm sitting there staring at it. Normally, you can only have 6 items. The reason why that you can get more, or 6 affixes on any item, the reason why you can get more is because if you do so, it changes the rarity of the item. Now, how it does not actually change, because as you can see, you can never have more than 36 affixes assigned, but you can get more than 6 categories. Most items are going to have between 4 and 5 categories. Whenever you roll right here, the maximum amount that you can get on any one is 10. Obviously, it will go red if you try to get less than that. So, basically, it rolls 1d4 here, and then it rolls a 1d10 to assign. Then it rolls a 1d4 here, and a 1d10 once you choose the assignment. Then it rolls a 1d3 here with a 1d10. And then it will roll a 1d10 to choose whether or not you have that. And then it'll roll a 1d10 unless the remaining value is less than 10. And then it will roll 1d, whatever that number happens to be. So if we do 7, now it would create the item. These things right here that appear whenever all the red goes away are strings that are meant to be used for the database right here. Basically, when you create an item, this is so that they don't have to type all of this in. Basically, they can just copy paste it into the database. It allows them to make several items very quickly. And these right here get sent to the master sheet, so he can just copy from one sheet and make several items at the same time. Based on this sheet, he can make 11 items very quickly. In fact, when I'll show you the randomizer later, but they can make a ton like items extraordinarily quickly. So when you get an item affix, the displayed value is actually multiplied by a multiplier per stat based off the item level. So for example, if the item level is item level 60, you'll notice that all of these stats have changed. So like this was 251, now it's 371, even though it has the exact same number of affixes as before. So no matter what piece of gear you have, it has technically 36 affixes. Usually a maximum of 6 categories of affixes, and then 1 to 10 in each one of those stats. And I need to put that back. All right, cool. So the sheet also includes a reset button, which resets everything on the sheet to all these things to 0. And I'm just swapping over so that I can show you on video the different affixes for a belt item. Obviously, it changed 2 secondary or primary stats here. It changed what set of resistances you can get, and it changed a handful of these. Back items are even more special because they do not have the toughness strength thing. If I remember correctly, you can get 2 affixes from the primary group and up to 3 resistances. Yeah. But of course, you have to have at least 1 primary stat and 1 resistance on the back gear. This means backs technically have the most number of possible stat combinations. So back pieces are one of the more, I would guess to say a little bit harder to get a perfect back than it would be the other 2 sets. The reason that allows Kep to make these items extraordinarily quickly is you see this button right here that's called a randomizer. If you turn this on, now the sheet automatically populates items and puts in things that follows those same conditions. And it uses those dice roll systems that I was telling you about previously. All of our items have a item affix naming system, so that when you see them on the server, you have a rough idea of what you are actually looking at. So whereas this says the foul wrap of balance, a wrap is a belt that has spirit and elemental resistance. So it has the spirit and elemental resistance. A foul, which, yeah, that's going to be fun, because that's not in alphabetical order. Foul means that it has more affixes in critical hit and HP 4. So notice it has critical hit rate and HP 4 on the item. And the last affix of balance is because it has toughness and agility. So this item has toughness, agility, critical hit rating, and HP 4, and 2 different resistances, and that's how the name goes. So for the most part, what that purpose is that you can search items on the auction house and see items that have the same category of affixes, but not necessarily the same type. So you can get 2 foul wraps of balance. Obviously, they have different values of agility, toughness, crit, HP 4, and resistances, but pretty much every foul, rapid, balance is going to have these 6 affixes. You also might have noticed that pretty much every single item has a talisman slot, except for weapons, which are all non-combat gear, which means you will always have access to 11 talisman slots. Now, almost everything that I have been showing you has been green items. Blue items are basically exactly the same as green items, except they would come out of Reynolds boxes. So basically, you can buy specific types. Very similar to actually how these vendors are. It's like, so like if you would go to a belt, a Reynolds belt box, and it would only have belts in it. All right. But purple items, remember I was telling you they can have more affixes and stuff. That is for superior crates of good, and superior crates of goods are usually not assigned random values. They're generally more manually created items with a different restriction set, and that is to make them more valuable. In the case of what you're currently seeing here, these are actually just items that I created in order to have perfect, in quotations, perfect items, perfectly rolled for specific roll sets. And that's to facilitate testing. So like these items of the realm is basically like a stat set for a healer. Notice they're all 40 willpower. And they have toughness rather than offensive stats. They've got critical hit rates. Then you've got these Kep items, which are all very tanky oriented. You've got the Jono items, which are all melee DPS, physical melee DPS oriented. The Az items that are magical melee DPS oriented. Blah 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 blah. But that also just showcases a little bit of like how purple items will be. They won't be as insanely perfect as these. These are just for testing purposes. But there is actually one other type of thing. So astute people might have noticed that on here it says Master Override. So right now the only person who has access to the Master Override sheet that can do this is myself. But if this is checked, then the item can completely negate any rule sets related to the Affix system. However, the item will appear as a mythic item. So they still can only have 36 affixes total, but they're not restricted in those categories that you saw. These will be very heavily restricted. These will be for like specific quest rewards, maybe hard-end PvE, stuff like that. It's not going to be anything special, but I just wanted to showcase that is a potential thing that we will use. But if it ever is used, it will be very obvious that the item is outside of normal affixes. For example, these jewels of balance. It's impossible to get 48 of a primary stat on an item level 40 item. It's also impossible to get wounds on a piece of jewelry under normal circumstances. Like if you switch here and you go to 31, it will not have wounds in this category. You can't put it in. And that is a little bit about the item system. Hopefully those of you that were asking, that gives you a good visual of what is going to be happening. This stuff right here that is mostly just that's whited out on the rest is just how this sheet works. It's a bunch of calculations and stuff like that. The main reason I'm showing it to you is to show you that it does use these 1D. It does do dice roll systems to determine what's going on. Actually, let me hit that randomizer there so I can show it, where it will change the value of, see, 1d15, 1d6, 1d15, 1d14, 1d8. And that is the item affix system. Like I said, Kep has made just an absolute ton of those. And just because this is the order side, and you saw a new character sponsor, because this is the test server, I'm going to fly my lovely character over here to the Destro side and give it a second to actually catch up to me. And the same items are currently available to the Destro players as well. It's literally the same vendors, except they get Bloodthirsters instead of Steam Tanks, and that is a whole bunch of inside jokes, which one day you guys might hear about. But yeah, that is the Interbellum item system as you currently see it. And I hope more of you guys get to actually play around and look through all of Kep's items to see how absolutely random it is outside of what I've just shown you on this video. Hope to see you guys around.